My husband, Mike, quit his job but refuses to help any house chores. On top of that, he verbally abuses me. It even seems like he's having an affair. In order to catch him in the act, I came up with a plan. I pretended to go on a trip and left the house. Watching from a local coffee shop, I saw Mike's ex, Sarah, entering our home. Intending to catch the two of them red-handed, I quietly unlocked the door and tiptoed up the stairs. I overheard Mike and Sarah's conversation coming from the bedroom. "I never thought I'd run into you again working at that gas station. This must be fate. Ah, why did I marry her? Why did you marry your wife? I thought she'd be docile and easily obey me. If I can control the money, I can spend however I want. A free housekeeper? But lately, I can't stand even breathing the same air with her." "Oh, Mike, you're so mean," Sarah giggled. I could feel my blood boiling. They sure have a lot to say, don't they? Who do they think they are? They'll regret those words soon enough. My name is Diane, a 30-year-old housewife. After graduating from college, I started working at a small business and worked hard to adapt to the working environment. By the time I got the hang of my job, I was already in my mid-20s. As news of my friends getting married poured in, I felt the pressure. It was then that I met Mike through a mutual acquaintance. After several dinners, I realized Mike was the complete opposite of me. He's friendly, a great chatter, and has a lot of charm. "You're so feminine and lovely, Diane. Baking and crafting? Sounds like you'd make a great wife." He unabashedly complimented and flattered me. Eventually, Mike confessed his feelings, and we began dating. The following year, we got married. The fun part was only at the beginning. Soon after, Mike started making condescending remarks towards me. Right after we got married, I felt something was off about what Mike said to me. He was pressuring me to become a stay-at-home wife. "Why don't you quit your job? Your salary's probably low since you work at a small company. We can live comfortably on just my earnings, you know." I was taken aback, not expecting him to say something like that. "Sure, my company might be smaller compared to your big corporation, Mike. But it's an established firm, so the salary is steady, and the benefits are good. Plus, without any kids around, it seems like a waste to be home all day." Mike frowned upon hearing my rebuttal. "You just don't want to do housework properly. If you tried, there wouldn't be enough hours in the day. I want to work outside, Mike. Even if I earn less than you, I want to earn my own spending money. Plus, in this day and age, there's no guarantee that a husband will be able to work up to retirement. You worry too much, Diane. My company's not going under. Got it, I'll just give you an allowance, all right?" Mike laughed as if it couldn't be helped. "I'll handle the finances. I can't trust you with it, you're too careless." His arrogant words irritated me, but there was some truth in them. Mike's reliable, and he went to a better college than I did, so he's more accomplished. "Anyway, quit your job by the end of this month." "All right, I got it." It was a real shame since I was just starting to enjoy my job, but I couldn't argue with Mike, so I just went along with it. However, Mike's domineering behavior didn't stop there. Every evening when he came home, he started inspecting the entire house. If he found even a single hair on the floor, he'd get in a bad mood. "What did you do all day? Probably just spend it watching TV or on your phone, right? Must be nice being a woman. Get 3 meals and a nap, and your husband supports you." Mike, using the fact that I was a housewife, never helped with any chores. When I was bedridden for 3 days with the flu, he didn't even wash his own dishes and complained instead of being concerned for me. "This mess is your fault. Why can't you take care of yourself? You get sick like this because you're always lazing around. Come on, you can do some chores even with a slight fever." "I'm sorry. This is how it was every day." Mike nitpicked every little mistake I made. I wanted to stand up to him, but I still loved Mike and was afraid of starting a fight that might lead to a divorce proposal. He's probably just stressed out from work right now. If he could just calm down a bit, he should return to the gentle Mike I knew when we were dating. I kept telling myself that, enduring each day. But as if mocking my faint hopes, Mike became more and more arrogant with each passing day. He demanded too much femininity from me. Always look pretty. Don't embarrass me. I get it. Keep your hair brown and straight. No pants. Wear a skirt since you're a woman. I will. Don't wear the same clothes all the time. It'll look like we're broke. Nobody's gonna think that. You're so naive. I check out what the young women in the neighborhood are wearing. Others surely do the same. Just do as I say. Forcing his ideas on me, I dyed my hair monthly, got it straightened, and regularly bought new clothes. Yet, he only gave me an allowance of $50 a month. At first, I spent from my savings before marriage, but when that ran out, I asked Mike for permission to work from home. I thought of resuming my hobby of making bead accessories. Nowadays, if it becomes popular online, it'll sell, which is the convenience of this era. Turns out, it became more popular than I expected, quickly became a hot topic, and in no time, I was booked for the next year. Working only during the weekdays wasn't enough. Even after Mike came home or on weekends, I continued working, which brought sarcasm from him. Must be nice being a housewife. Play at home and still get paid. Oh man, I wish I could play video games all day and earn money. Well, how about I work full-time and you stay at home? Half seriously suggesting that, Mike's face turned bright red in anger. Are you out of your mind? I work hard for that company. Without me, they'd go under. I had to hold back my laughter. Mike's company is a world-renowned corporation. One mid-level employee quitting wouldn't make a dent. One night, a drunk Mike came home and approached me as I was making accessories at a desk in the living room corner. He spoke with a stench of alcohol. Hey, food. I'll heat it up in the microwave. Just give me a minute. I replied hastily. Once I connect the wire with pliers, the piece I've worked on for a week will finally be complete. Just then, Mike leaned over to watch my careful work, and suddenly started shouting. Is that more important than your husband's dinner? Everyone's joking around here. Mike grabbed my piece out of my hands and yanked the wire forcefully. Colorful beads glittered in the air, scattering all over the floor. He kicked the table in front of me, threw the bead container against the wall, and then flopped onto the couch, snoring loudly before long. That's terrible! The deadline is tomorrow! Tears streaming down my face, I collected the beads, worked through the night without dinner, and managed to complete it. Exhausted, I sent the piece by express mail. When I got home, Mike was waiting at the front door with a scowl. Where were you so early in the morning? I delivered the piece to the client. The deadline was this morning. Oh. I thought he would apologize for last night, but Mike surprised me with his next words. I quit my job, so you won't have to iron my shirts for a while. Okay. Wait, you quit? Got tired of my incompetent boss. Don't worry. I'm good, I'll find something soon. Mike was full of confidence, but I felt a rising panic. Whenever we discuss finances, Mike gets grumpy, so I have no idea how much we have in savings. Thankfully, we inherited this house from my deceased parents, so we don't have a mortgage. But the burden of supporting both of us has suddenly fallen on me. I reached out to an online shopping company I had previously exchanged business cards with at an event and launched a new brand. After some time, my work started doing well, but Mike just took it easy and didn't look for a job. About a year after quitting his job, Mike reluctantly got back to work. But it was just a part-time job at a gas station, working only 3 days a week. Despite earning less than me, he still acted superior and held tight control over our finances. On top of that, for some reason, he'd get dressed up in the evening and head out. When asked where he was going, he'd say things like, going for a drink with a former coworker, or meeting a friend. I suspected infidelity, but Mike always took his cell phone with him, even to the bathroom, and kept it by his pillow when he slept. One day, on our way back from visiting Mike's parents, we stopped at a convenience store for coffee. He mentioned stopping at a rest stop, so I tried to check the distance on the GPS. And then, I found the hotel search history. I was shocked, but at the same time, I thought, yep, just as I suspected. He doesn't really work, doesn't do any chores, and he's cheating on me. All those insults and arrogant attitudes Mike threw at me in the past came rushing back, and I was fuming. I can't stand it anymore. I'm gonna divorce him. But first, I was thinking about getting some kind of revenge. I met up with an old friend, Amelia, for the first time in a while. I told her about Mike's affair and said I wanted to get back at him. She said she had a good idea. When I got home, I brought up the subject with Mike. Hey, remember Amelia from our wedding? Yeah. Can I go on a 3-day, 2-night trip with Amelia next weekend? Of course, on my dime. Mike, wide-eyed, quickly broke into a broad smile. Sounds great. You should take a break once in a while. Just like Amelia said, Mike agreed right away. He's definitely gonna bring his lover into our house while I'm away. Then, on the day of the trip, I left the house with my suitcase. I went out to the main street, crossed the crosswalk, and entered a cafe. There, I met Amelia sitting by the window. As we ate our dinner casseroles, I kept an eye on the street. After a while, a blonde woman with a black hat and black sunglasses appeared. In a street lined with shopping malls and buildings, where families and kids were walking or cycling, this woman was sneaking around, trying not to draw attention, and she looked downright suspicious. When the woman took off her sunglasses and looked up at my house from a side street, I recognized that face. Oh. That's Mike's ex-girlfriend. His ex? Yeah. I think her name was Sarah. I remembered because Mike once showed her on his phone screen. He seemed to be bragging about dating an older beauty back then. Watching through the window, as expected, Sarah was greeted by Mike and went into our house. As I was about to get up from my seat, Amelia asked me. She's probably sweaty, so she's likely headed straight for the bathroom. If you want to catch them there, you should go now. But if you want to catch them getting cozy in the bedroom, you should wait another 30 minutes. What's it gonna be? I think the bedroom's a safer bet. I chatted with Amelia to pass the time, and 30 minutes later, I left the cafe. I was filled more with anger than sadness from feeling betrayed. I realized that my feelings for Mike had long since faded. I quietly unlocked the front door and tiptoed up the stairs. I could hear Mike and Sarah talking from the bedroom. I never thought I'd run into you again working at that gas station. This must be fate. Ah, why did I marry her? Why did you marry your wife? I thought she'd be docile and easily obey me. If I can control the money, I can spend however I want. A free housekeeper? But lately, I can't stand even breathing the same air with her. Oh, Mike, you're so mean. Sarah giggled. Anger rushed to my head. The nerve of them. Who do they think they are? They'll regret saying that. Just as I was about to turn the doorknob, it seemed Mike sensed my presence. I heard scrambling noises from behind the door. When I flung the door open with force, the room was empty. On my bed, there was a neatly folded set of blue and pink pajamas. Looking at the window, I noticed the curtain was caught in it. They probably panicked and ran to the balcony in their underwear. I deliberately called out loudly. Mike, are you there? Of course, there was no response. Imagining the two of them trying to hide and crouching on the balcony made me want to laugh. Oh, seems like no one's home. Oh look, the window's unlocked. I walked over to the window, locked it, and left the room. Our house is set back a bit from the main road, but the balcony is clearly visible from there. It's close to office buildings and shopping malls, and there's always a lot of foot traffic, even in the mornings. If people saw a man and a woman on a balcony in their underwear, it would surely draw attention. Serves them right. With a smirk, I left the house. That morning, after staying at a business hotel, I woke up feeling refreshed. I was leisurely considering whether to grab breakfast at a cafe or maybe head to a diner when the phone rang. After ignoring about 30 calls, I finally answered. Mike's voice, sounding like he was about to cry, came through. Diane, please come back. It was the first time I'd heard him sound so vulnerable since we met. Pretending to be oblivious, I asked. Good morning. What's up? Because you locked the bedroom door last night, we got stuck out on the balcony. Commuters and the local old ladies kept staring at us. It was so embarrassing. Oh, I thought you were out since you didn't answer. Sorry about that. I replied with a cheerful tone. Wait, we? Who else is there? Just please come back soon. Mike, stumbling over his words, would never admit that his affair partner was with him. Even though, if I returned, it'd be obvious. I couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Feigning sorrow, I told him. I'm sorry. I'm on a trip, so it's gonna take me half a day to get back. What? I heard sniffling from the other end. Seems like Sarah couldn't hold back her tears. I took a deep breath and made an offer. If you agree to a divorce without any fuss, I might hurry back. And make sure you turn in all the evidence of affair. Divorce? Why? You know very well why. After a long silence, a defeated Mike replied. All right. I'll do whatever you say, just please come back. I hung up, packed my stuff, and left the hotel. After enjoying a leisurely breakfast at a cafe, I stopped by a place before heading home. I noticed a group of local housewives whispering under my balcony. Oh, Mrs. Thompson. Your husband and some woman are on the balcony. What happened? Who knows? I replied with a smile, acting as if it was none of my business, and went inside. Heading into the bedroom and unlocking the balcony door, Mike and Sarah rushed in as if racing each other. Man, that was rough. Mike, only in his boxers, muttered while scratching his head. Sarah, in a bright red lace dress, looked miserable with her makeup smeared from crying and her face puffy. Waiting for Mike and Sarah to get dressed, I spoke solemnly. Now, show me the evidence of the affair as promised. You have texts and all sorts of proof, right? Mike smirked as I hold out my hand. Who do you think is gonna hand that over? What? You're probably planning on milking money from me and then leaving. But I ain't agreeing to divorce. Right, Sarah? Sarah nodded. It seemed that Sarah was knowingly continuing a relationship with a married man. Not sure if he thought I was taken aback by the silence, Mike got cocky and continued. You think you can live without me? Playing the victim over a little affair. Just keep taking care of me like you always have. All right, recording done. I held up my phone and pressed the stop recording button, leaving Mike stunned. I smiled at Mike and explained. I never expected you to obey me. I was waiting for you to incriminate yourself during our conversation. Your comments just now are sufficient evidence of verbal abuse and infidelity. Huh, think it's gonna be that easy? I have more. I've been keeping record of your verbal abuses for over a year. And about the affair, I hired a private investigator about 2 months ago. Just received a bunch of incriminating photos. As I spread out the photos from my suitcase across the bedroom floor, Mike's face tightened. There were unmistakable shots of them being affectionate in public, happily entering hotels, and hugging inside Mike's car. Then, Sarah, who had been silent until now, spoke with a hint of confusion. Mike, you told me your wife was clueless and would never find out. What are we gonna do now? It's okay, Sarah. Just leave it to me. She's always done what I say. She'll come crawling back. She can't live without me. I found it hilarious how Mike was still acting so arrogant with his face pale. Where was this confidence coming from? I asked Mike in a calm voice. I want to ask something. Why do you assume I can't live on my own? I have a stable income. I think you, who can't do house chores, will have a harder time. Huh? I'm talented, so of course I can handle anything. Mike answered with utmost confidence. You're head over heels for me, you know. You'd be lost without me. I'm saying we shouldn't get a divorce for your sake. I felt like I was about to faint. After all the verbal abuse, not giving me money, and even cheating, he still believed in my love for him. How delusional could he be? Trying to change the topic, I turned to Sarah. Of course, once you get together with this man, you will probably need to support him, so good luck. Sarah flinched, becoming increasingly restless. Oh Oh no, I don't have the money. I can't do this. I get that kids in middle school are expensive, but that's what you get. The atmosphere became tense after my statement. Kids? Sarah, I thought you were single. Sarah lowered her eyes, looking guilty, biting her lip. Mike, didn't you know? Sarah's been divorced twice. For real? And she has a kid that old? No way. Sarah glared at Mike, her eyes narrowed. What's wrong with having an older child? Mike, you love kids. Don't talk like that. Mike doesn't like kids. That's why we don't have any. I chimed in, and Sarah looked at Mike in disbelief. He lied to me. How cruel. I sighed at Sarah's angry outburst. You're no different, Sarah. You seem to have quite a colorful circle of friends. In front of a puzzled Mike, I produced documents regarding Sarah. I had hired a private investigator to look into Sarah, and it turned out she was involved with several other married men besides Mike. Although there weren't any photos as evidence within a day, the report said she was in midst of troubles with wives of those married men. Sarah turned pale, stammering her defense. No, you've got it all wrong. The person I fell for just happened to be married. Well, you were still dating Mike at the same time, weren't you? I glanced over to see Mike's face contorted in anger. Hey, explain yourself. You said you weren't dating anyone. Mike confronted Sarah, who seemed fed up with having to explain herself. Finally, with a scoff, she replied smugly. Well, it costs a lot to raise a middle schooler. Spas, hair salons, and nail bars aren't cheap either. It sure was helpful that you guys thought I was single and would spend a lot of money on me. You snake! All right. Settle your quarrels elsewhere. Either way, I'll start filing for our divorce. Let's agree on the terms and then get divorced. I said coldly to the two of them. Mike, even if you're broke, our properties will be split equally. Make sure you don't play any fools on me anymore. Sarah tilted her head. You're a manager at a big company and you're broke? That was over a year ago. He was fired for constantly verbally abusing his subordinates. Now he's working part-time jobs. I'm the one supporting him. You even investigated on that? You're the one who lied. Now it was Sarah who was furious. I thought you said you were working part-time for some extra cash. You even showed me your business card. This is fraud. Exactly. I agreed. I always wondered, Mike, why you acted so high and mighty around me, even when you're just working part-time. Now I get it. Admitting that I support you hurts your pride, huh? Mike's face turned bright red. What a small man. I was so wrong about you. Mike snapped at her after Sarah muttered under her breath. Shut it, you liar. Look who's talking. I'm going back to the hotel. Mike, pack up your stuff within a week and leave. I'll start filing our divorce. I announced, leaving the house while Mike and Sarah continued to argue loudly. Their shouting reached the street, drawing giggles from passers-by. At this rate, they'll break up soon. Thinking about it gave me a feeling of relief. Though Mike was hesitant about the divorce, he was persuaded by the lawyer, who warned him. Taking this to court will cost a lot. And he reluctantly agreed to the divorce. Mike haggled a lot about the evidence, saying things like, "That's not a big deal." And, "She's overreacting for just 6 months of cheating, it's ridiculous." But overall, our divorce was settled with our properties to be divided equally. After our separation, he called me begging for support, but my lawyer warned him not to contact me directly, and he seemed to finally give up. The whole process took about half a year after I locked Mike and Sarah out on the balcony. Mike spent all his savings and moved to a 50-year-old apartment and began earnestly looking for a full-time job to be able to support himself. He finally found a job at a small company where, on weekdays, he has to comply to a younger boss, and on weekends, works at gas stations and barbecue joints, from dawn to late night. After breaking up with Mike, Sarah apparently got involved with several married men, and it seems their wives found out and took action. Turns out, even after the divorce, she lived off money from these men. With no resource for money anymore, having no other option, she started working. I heard she's juggling 3 part-time jobs, working from the early morning to late night. The other day, I saw Sarah in town. She looked gaunt and completely worn out, appearing older than her actual age. After divorcing Mike, I reached out to the company I had reluctantly left and got rehired as a full-time employee. I make jewelry during my weekends. My reputation as a jewelry designer is gradually rising, and lately, I've been getting interviewed for magazines. It's busy but fulfilling days. No longer do I exhaust myself keeping the house spotless or walking on eggshells around my husband, or feeling hollow about my work. On weekend mornings, sipping tea while listening to the chirping of the birds is just delightful. From now on, I want to cherish my alone time and give my all to my work. It was a day where the harsh summer sun still shone strongly. I received a call from my nearby living son, Ethan. He said he'd like me to come over for Caleb's birthday. Our grandson, Caleb, is celebrating his birthday. Caleb is only 5 years old, so celebrating his birthday is quite meaningful. Holding the gift my husband, Robert, and I picked out, I headed over to Ethan's house and rang the doorbell. Upon answering the door, the first thing Ethan did was gesture with his chin, implying that I should prepare some dishes for the party. Suppressing my feelings, I prepared some dishes using the ingredients available in their house for Caleb, today's birthday boy. After arranging them on the dining table, thinking of making it colorful, just as I finished setting up, Ethan's wife, Sarah, spoke up. "We're expecting friends soon, so this is enough." I wasn't sure what she meant by that, but following her statement, Ethan, chuckling, told me to just leave the gift and head home quickly. Feeling embarrassed, I merely looked down, unsure how to act in front of Robert. As for Robert, he observed the couple's arrogant behavior for a while, but eventually whispered, "Guess this will be the last time." People often talk about the importance of education, but I dropped out of high school. I've never been ashamed of dropping out of high school, nor have I regretted not going to college. However, I am aware that society has a particularly harsh perception of it. To be honest, my husband, Robert, not only graduated from a graduate school but also studied abroad, truly a top-tier guy. Robert never judges me based on education, but some folks and relatives mentioned our mismatched educational backgrounds, making me feel guilty. However, Robert never paid any mind to those outside opinions and kept showering me with love, teaching me that real elites don't judge solely based on titles. Granted, it might just be Robert's exceptional nature, but after marrying him, we were blessed with a son named Ethan. I believed parenting was a joint effort, but due to strong requests from Robert's parents, they often took care of Ethan. Around that time, Robert, being busy with his business, I felt reluctant to burden him. Gratefully accepting their offer is something I regret to this day. It's as if Ethan had 2 sets of parents, a structure that negatively impacted his upbringing. When we cared for him, we disciplined him to be honest, but Robert's parents spoiled him. By the time we realized, Ethan had developed a very arrogant and selfish attitude. He became someone who was reluctant to face challenges, wanted to dominate others, and looked down on them based on his own biased standards. Perhaps not seeing his busy father, Robert, frequently played a role in Ethan's attitude. It became most evident after Ethan graduated from grad school. He began openly disrespecting me due to my educational background. But I knew not everyone was like Ethan, having seen Robert's kindness. Thanks to that, I never let Ethan's words hurt me. Still, I worried that Ethan's attitude would drive people away. I considered discussing it with Robert, but figured Ethan wouldn't change unless something major occurred. However, setting aside such concerns, Ethan experienced his own spring. The year after graduating from graduate school, he joyfully informed us that he was considering marriage. The lady in question is an elegant woman named Sarah, who, he mentioned, has been a friend since high school. Dressed in luxury brands, her elegance caught our eye. They decided not to have a wedding, so we gifted them a lavish photo shoot at a studio. A token from us wishing to celebrate their new journey. Sarah, like me, had dropped out of high school. However, Ethan never looked down on her in the way some might have with me. I was greatly pleased, thinking that this change in his attitude indicated his growth and maturity. However, I was soon to realize that wasn't the case. Shortly after they began their married life, while I was cleaning my house, Sarah called. Apparently, their vacuum cleaner wasn't working, and she wanted me to look at it. I suppressed my initial thought that they could have easily called the manufacturer and decided to head over for my daughter-in-law's sake. Upon arriving at my son and his wife's high-rise apartment in downtown New York, I was directed by the concierge to their room. When Sarah opened the door, both she and a child were inside. I felt a little surprised seeing the child I hadn't met during our initial meeting. Assuming it might be a relative's child they were babysitting, I didn't mention it. The reason I was called was to check on their malfunctioning vacuum. When I opened it up, the filter was completely clogged. While replacing it, I thought, surely they know about changing filters, and just like that, the vacuum started working fine again. "Oh, thank you so much!" Sarah exclaimed as she noticed the vacuum humming back to life. "It wasn't really broken," I explained. "The filter was just full." I showed her the clogged filter. Sarah looked genuinely surprised, as if she'd never seen such a thing before. "I didn't know vacuums could get like that," she said. For a moment, I wondered if she was joking. However, glancing around, I noticed laundry haphazardly hung up and tablecloths wrinkled. I realized that Sarah might not be very good with household chores, an impression I hadn't gotten when we first met. Thinking I might be called upon again for such basic household matters, I decided to give Sarah a brief rundown. "Sarah," I began. "About the vacuum filter." "Oh, when it gets full again, can you take care of it?" she interrupted. I was taken aback by her casual attitude, but Sarah continued. "Ethan told me that if there's any trouble, I should just get you to handle it." I was speechless. Ethan has always looked down on me, but I never imagined that even his wife, Sarah, would treat me like a maid. There's no doubt in my mind he's been saying this. Maybe I was the one who was too caught up in judging people based on their education, thinking Ethan had matured just because he married a woman without a college degree. I felt ashamed of my foolishness. From then on, whenever Sarah felt too lazy to cook or didn't feel like doing chores, she'd take advantage of Ethan and call me. And Ethan, instead of taking care of the household chores himself for Sarah, would summon me as a matter of course to finish all the household tasks at their home. If I ever got a call from Ethan in the evening, it was usually to hear, "Make dinner and clean up," or, "I'd like something American tonight," which meant shopping and preparation, a task that was often burdensome. There was a time when I was asked to babysit and found out that the child I had seen at Ethan's house before was Caleb, Sarah's 5-year-old son from her previous marriage. I wasn't told at our initial meeting, but it seems Sarah had been married and had a child before meeting Ethan. Not wanting to probe into their past, I just did as I was told. Caleb didn't seem too interested in interacting with others, often keeping himself busy with drawing or playing with toys. So babysitting wasn't a big deal. But the frequency of these calls was the real problem. I have my own plans and commitments, but I was summoned day and night. If I ever got there late, I'd get an earful, so little by little, my life began to revolve around Ethan and Sarah. And it wasn't just my household chores with Robert, but I was also saddled with chores at Ethan's house every time they called. I began to feel a fatigue that sleep alone couldn't cure. I didn't want to worry Robert, who was busy with his role as a company CEO, so I tried home exercises and self-massages. But there's only so much an amateur can do. Then, on a summer morning with frequent broadcasts warning about smog and heat stroke risks, I felt unwell and spent an extra 30 minutes in bed. Robert, used to me waking up at the same time every day, quickly noticed and showed concern. But he wouldn't buy my excuse of just feeling a bit lightheaded. The trust between Robert and me was strong. Admitting my ailment, I gently turned down Robert's offer to accompany me to the doctor, asking instead to rest at home without doing chores for the day. However, my situation didn't stop Ethan's phone from ringing. Dragging my weary body up to answer, as usual, I was told to clean at Ethan's place and look after Caleb. Wanting to honor my promise to Robert, I told Ethan about my condition and said I couldn't come today. But Ethan, acting as if I had no right to refuse, said, "We've got an unavoidable commitment, so you better be here," and hung up without waiting for my reply. Thinking of little Caleb being left alone, I couldn't not go. Pushing through the fatigue, I headed over to Ethan's place. When I got home, Ethan and Sarah had already left. Dishes were left half-eaten, and branded clothing was scattered everywhere. With a weary body, I forced myself to clean up, letting out a sigh. But, as I finished the dishes while keeping an eye on Caleb, I started to feel increasingly nauseous. My vision slowly began to blur from the edges. Eventually, I couldn't stand any longer and collapsed in the kitchen. Caleb was coloring in the living room, but I was out of his view, lying on the floor. The only thing I could muster was a weak awareness. I couldn't even call out and just curled up helplessly. Caleb, being a focused child, would probably not look up from his coloring for a while. I tried hard to move, thinking if I could just drink some water, but I couldn't get up. The more I strained, the worse I felt. My consciousness began to fade, and at some point, I thought I'd finally be at peace. Then, the front doorbell rang, and Robert entered the room. Seeing me, he gently picked me up. Concerned, he said to Caleb, "I'm gonna take your grandma home, okay? You'll be all right by yourself?" Caleb, though worried, nodded. Robert took me to his house, hydrated me, and carried me to bed. Apparently, on top of already being unwell, I had gotten dehydrated due to accumulated fatigue. With shallow breaths, I managed to tell Robert, "I'm so sorry for being a burden." He shook his head silently, squeezing my hand. Before heading to Ethan's house, I was glad I'd quickly informed Robert. I had promised to rest at home, but going out felt like betraying Robert's kindness. So, I'd updated him just in case. True to his word, Robert had come to pick me up from Ethan's place after wrapping up his work. And it couldn't have been more timely. Feeling safe in bed, I drifted into a deep sleep. When I woke up, it was already dinner time. Feeling rejuvenated after some rest and hydration, I headed to the kitchen to prepare dinner. To my surprise, a meal, probably prepared by Robert, was already set, just waiting to be served. Looking around, I found Robert sitting on the couch, engrossed in a magazine. Noticing I was up, he looked up and asked with concern, "You all right?" I replied with a thankful smile. "Thanks to you, yes. And thank you for preparing dinner." Chuckling, Robert said, "No problem at all." The relaxed atmosphere was heartwarming. As we finished our dinner, sitting on the sofa, Robert started. "About Ethan." Feeling the problem was no longer mine alone, I decided to open up. I explained how Sarah wasn't skilled at household chores and how Ethan kept pushing tasks onto me. The child at home was Sarah's from her previous marriage, named Caleb. Due to the responsibilities dumped on me, I often felt fatigued and couldn't manage my health properly. As I sporadically talked about my own inadequacies, Robert crossed his arms and put a hand to his chin, gesturing as if deep in thought. Unable to decipher what was on his mind, I simply waited in anticipation for his next reaction. I feared he might be disappointed in me. But when he looked at me again, his expression was calm, suggesting I stop visiting Ethan's place. From then on, I received frequent calls from Ethan, but I stopped responding. I felt sorry for Caleb, but I wasn't their housekeeper. And I couldn't overexert myself, especially after worrying my dear husband. However, after a few weeks, a different kind of message came. It was an invitation for Caleb's once-a-year birthday party. I thought I should perhaps attend. After discussing with Robert, we decided to go and celebrate together. On the day, as we reached Ethan's place, he immediately instructed me to prepare a lavish meal for the party. I was prepared for this, so I looked up some easy party recipes online and started making dishes like gratin, potato salad, and vegetable broth soup. After a while, as I laid out the colorful spread, Sarah, smiling, said, "Our friends will be here soon, you can leave now. After the cooking is done, there's no role for you." While I was declining the calls, I couldn't help but feel angered at how much their attitude had worsened, but I held back because of Caleb being there. Then, joining in with Sarah, Ethan chuckled and said, "You brought a present, didn't you? Just drop it off and leave." I felt ashamed, especially because Robert was with us today, and I looked down. On the other hand, Robert had been quietly observing the situation, and then murmured in a barely audible tone, "Well, it's gonna be the last time this year." Ethan seemed not to hear Robert's whisper and pushed me towards the exit, urging me to leave quickly. So, without celebrating Caleb's birthday directly, Robert and I left Ethan's house. Overwhelmed with guilt, I quickly apologized, but Robert firmly said, "No, it's him who's wrong," and then drove me home before heading to work. Later, he went to his office alone. Once I was alone at home, I sat down on the living room couch and soon fell asleep, unable to resist the sudden wave of fatigue. I wish I could forget the shame I caused Robert as soon as possible. A few days later, around 7 a.m., the doorbell rang, and I heard the sound of heavy footsteps. Ethan burst into the room, yelling, "Dad, what's this about me being transferred to the regional planning department?" Ethan shouted, his face reddening to the point where his veins bulged. It seemed Robert had given Ethan a transfer order. "It's the consensus of everyone." Robert responded calmly without changing his expression. The truth was, after Ethan graduated from graduate school and couldn't find a job, he joined the company run by Robert through connections. While Robert's character made it easier for the company executives to accept Ethan's employment, Ethan's work performance was unsatisfactory, causing problems for everyone. Not only was he unable to produce results, but he also often billed personal entertainment and golfing expenses to the company, causing frequent issues. Robert himself had directly warned and urged Ethan to improve several times, but Ethan was unresponsive. Seeing Ethan's unreasonable demands towards me was likely the last straw for Robert. With the company's upcoming international expansion, Robert decided that he couldn't keep Ethan in a central position any longer and decided to transfer him to a regional miscellaneous task department with the support of the executives. Robert had always believed people could change, hoping Ethan would eventually understand the importance of his work and act sincerely. He hadn't given up on him until now, but it seemed he had reached the end of his patience. It showed just how low Ethan had fallen in the eyes of both his colleagues and family. When Ethan heard the reason for his transfer from Robert and was told, "Until you cool down and repent, I won't recognize you," he began to tremble. Ethan then glared at Robert, warning, "Are you okay with never seeing your grandson again?" referencing Caleb, but Robert didn't flinch. "After all, Caleb isn't our real grandson. There's no blood connection. If my wife is ridiculed by your charmless daughter-in-law, I don't feel anything, even if I don't see them." Saying this, as if to make Ethan re-recognize what he had done to me so far, my husband began to speak calmly and started to explain the situation Ethan is in now. Firstly, the luxury condo Ethan was living in was owned by Robert. So, Robert could always check the building's security camera footage, implying that he knew how frequently Ethan was bothering me. Additionally, the car Ethan was using privately was a company car owned by Robert's company, hinting at the consequences Ethan might face. Robert said, "For someone who was merely in a privileged position given by his parents but looked down on others and didn't strive for personal growth, this isn't suitable," and told Ethan to pack up and leave. Finally realizing the gravity of the situation, Ethan began to apologize profusely. He would lose his place to live and the car he needed for mobility, so it was a natural reaction. Ethan tried desperately to apologize to Robert, tears spilling from my eyes. However, Robert is a person who is trusted by many for his ability to execute decisions as a business leader. It was clear that no amount of apologizing would change the situation. Ethan stopped apologizing and began to limp towards the entrance. Robert and I slowly followed his retreating figure. Just before the door closed, Robert sternly told Ethan, "The child is not to blame. Grow up, man." It was a few days after Ethan had been transferred to Nebraska. Ethan called me, saying he couldn't make his credit card payments on time and had racked up a lot of charges. He needed help. Apparently, Sarah had been using Ethan's card on her own to buy designer goods and expensive makeup. Naturally, it was his own doing, so neither Robert nor I paid any mind. We decided not to lend a hand until we see a real change in him. So, there's no way we could help out here. I told Ethan to figure it out on his own, then hung up the phone, letting out a sigh. He's probably just now feeling the real world's pinch, having lived off his parents for so long. Though he should have realized sooner, considering some of our faults in shaping Ethan's character, I felt a bit guilty for putting pressure on Sarah. But then again, thinking about what Sarah did to me, it's her own karma. People can find happiness through compassion and personal growth, not just by surrounding themselves with luxuries. I hope they realize that. Now that I'm no longer summoned by Ethan and his family, I've reclaimed time for myself and started a new hobby. I've been trying out various baking recipes and posting photos on social media. Every now and then, I get a positive comment that boosts my self-esteem. I feel way more fulfilled than before. Meanwhile, since Ethan's transfer to Nebraska, the previously struggling department Robert oversees has regained momentum. It's giving a significant boost to their international expansion, and business is booming. Thanks to the company's rapid growth, Robert, despite his age, has become somewhat of a celebrity in the domestic CEO community. I rejoice in Robert's success and hope that someday Ethan will have a change of heart and become as sincere a person as Robert. Robert proves there's no limit to human growth. Someday, they'll realize that it was all done out of love. When that day comes, I'll be happy to cook a meal for Ethan and his family. Our family has a secret. A secret that my husband, Bob, and I are keeping from our daughter, Marie. It's not that we want to keep it a secret forever, we plan to tell her when the time is right, but because I am such a coward, I have not been able to reveal it until today. I was afraid that it might shock her or that she might hate us if we told her, so I couldn't bring myself to open my mouth. I wish we could have gone through high school without any problems, but reality was not so kind. Marie realized the secret when she went to donate blood with her friends because she wanted to contribute to society. Yes, through her blood type. The staff at the donation center casually mentioned her blood type, and she realized that something was off. Both my husband and I have type O blood. However, the blood type Marie was told by the staff was type A. When I asked her what was wrong because she looked strange when she came home, Marie seemed to want to say something but didn't say anything right away. When we sat down for dinner with Bob, Marie, with a determined look on her face, asked, "Am I an abandoned child?" Overwhelmed with emotion, I couldn't answer, and Marie, feeling more anxious, started crying and locked herself in her room. My name is Wendy, I am 41 years old. I am a housewife working part-time at a supermarket. My husband, Bob, is a salaried worker, and our daughter, Marie, just turned 17 and is a high school student. We live in an apartment complex aimed at families, and while we can't afford any luxuries, we have been living a relatively fulfilling life. I admit that I am indecisive, but Marie is the complete opposite of me. She is open-minded and reliable, so somehow we balance each other out. For example, most of our conversations at home are initiated by Marie. She talks in detail about small things that happened at school, like being praised in club activities, so we naturally look forward to listening to her stories. And as for Bob, he is incredibly kind and has a deep sense of empathy. He has never gotten angry with his family. Whenever a problem arises, he quickly organizes the situation and finds a solution before anyone gets emotional. In this well-balanced family, 17 years have passed. Today, like every other day, we had breakfast and dinner together, listened to Marie's stories, and enjoyed our close-knit family life. By the way, today's episode from Marie was about walking the neighbor's dog, Mrs. Berger, and seeing a gecko on her way home from school, and she talked about it very cheerfully. However, we have a secret that we are keeping from Marie. The truth is, I planned to tell her when she graduated from middle school, but I was too cowardly to say anything. The longer I put it off, the harder it becomes to say it, so I feel like I have to tell her when she graduates from high school, but I am still scared to say it out loud. I am afraid that our relationship will fall apart or that Marie will despise us, and I can't help but think negatively. I am aware that it is a bad habit of mine. Bob offered to talk to Marie if it was too hard for me, but I told him that I wanted to tell her myself, so he is being supportive. I might be frustrating him by not being able to say it even though I wanted to. But he respects my decision and waits for me without saying anything, and that's the kind of person Bob is. I don't know how many times I have been saved by Bob's personality. The story is about the relationship between Marie's birth and Bob. When I was a college student, I was asked out by two men who went to the same university as me. One was a guy named Tom, who I had been friends with since high school, and the other was Bob, who I became friends with in a college club. I didn't have romantic feelings for either of them, so I struggled a lot, but in the end, I decided to date Tom. When I turned down Bob's confession and told him that I wanted to be friends, not lovers, he kindly accepted it and told me that I could always talk to him if I needed to. I still think that it would have been better if I had chosen Bob at that time. It's pointless to regret it now, but there are times when I can't help but think about it. I think I started dating Tom in the winter of my second year of college, and in the beginning, he took me to aquariums and amusement parks a lot. I wasn't the type to get a lot of attention, but I heard later that Tom was enthusiastic because Bob had also confessed to me at the same time. As a result, I gradually got used to the relationship and started to think about a future with Tom, at least a little. After graduating from college, I started living with Tom, but living together revealed aspects of Tom's character that I hadn't seen before. We both started working at companies as new graduates, but instead of sharing household chores, everything was left to me, and Tom would spend money recklessly on every occasion. The money in the account we created for saving for the future was used up before I realized it, and Tom showed no signs of remorse. Eventually, I couldn't bear it anymore, and when I asked him to help with the chores or pointed out his sloppiness, he would get angry, making it increasingly difficult to handle. Although he never laid a hand on me, he started coming home less frequently and even started staying out all night, making me question the purpose of our cohabitation. Being a new graduate and having a changed environment, I had no one to consult with and felt exhausted from enduring everything alone. I considered breaking up several times, but I was afraid of getting emotionally upset and scolded, so time just passed without me saying anything. Then, when I fell ill and went to the hospital, I was informed that I was pregnant. Hosting a child, in any form, was irreplaceable for me, so I immediately reported it to Tom, but he flew into a rage and demanded an abortion. Tom was not prepared to share his life with me, and he probably saw me as nothing more than a convenient existence to take care of household chores and errands. When it came to raising a child, he was strongly opposed to being tied down by marriage, parenting, and family life, and demanded that I absolutely give it up. However, I couldn't give up my child, and with a strong desire to protect the child in my womb, I left the house I shared with Tom. I thought that the opportunity to meet the child in my belly was only once, and I couldn't bring myself to have an abortion. However, having moved to a big city for college, I had no reliable family nearby, and I couldn't afford to take a break from my new job. In my desperation, I headed to the apartment of Bob, whom I hadn't seen since graduating from college. Bob was visibly surprised by my sudden appearance, but he seemed to sense my distress and kindly let me into his home without saying a word. Then, after I organized my situation, he thought with me about what he could do to help. Bob still liked me and said he was very happy that I relied on him. I didn't want to take advantage of Bob's kindness, so I planned to give birth alone after staying with him for a while, but Bob didn't approve. Knowing that I was pregnant, he couldn't just stand by and do nothing, and he said he wanted me to consider living with him. Probably out of consideration so I wouldn't feel guilty. He might have had various conflicts that I didn't know about, but he swallowed them and chose to live with me and my unborn child. I ended up relying on Bob's kindness, so I promised to support our daily lives as much as possible, and Bob agreed to do so within his means. Although my pregnancy was a surprise to my coworkers and I was viewed with curiosity, I was able to resign amicably thanks to the understanding of some senior colleagues. Thinking about the future, Bob suggested that it would give our child more options if we unified our surnames to mine, so Bob entered my family as a son-in-law, and we submitted our marriage registration. He went out of his way to accommodate me, who was suddenly carrying a child, and accepted everything literally. Of course, both our parents opposed. Especially, I thought it was natural for Bob's parents to oppose. They probably didn't want their son to start a family with a woman carrying another man's child. It was easy to imagine, and I thought it was unavoidable. However, Bob rejected their objections with his characteristic sincerity, explaining that it was not a fleeting emotion. The powerful words "I want to believe in her and be close to her" that Bob said to his parents still resonate strongly in my heart. On the other hand, my parents thanked and apologized to Bob, emphasizing that they would always rely on him in times of need, as he supports the lives of me and our child. Being called the benefactor of their daughter, Bob seemed embarrassed, but he held my hand and declared, "I will make you happy." He took turns doing the housework when I was struggling with morning sickness during pregnancy and made sure to come home as early as possible and provide solid support after childbirth. He never misses recording the growth of Marie on video and dotes on her as if he were her biological father, for which I am very grateful. Now, it almost feels as if the time I spent with Tom never existed. However, the impact of this seemingly natural family image on me is not all positive. Every time I witness the magnitude of Bob's character, my chest tightens. It's probably punishment for not choosing Bob back then, but I can't shake off the lingering guilt. Every moment of happiness now seems so fragile, and there are times when I feel hopelessly anxious. I am terrified that revealing my secret may hurt the two of them. Bob is living with us knowing all the circumstances, so depending on Marie's reaction, it might cause trouble for Bob as well. One might think that if I'm so worried, I should just confess quickly, but I don't have the courage to do so. I disgust myself for saying that. Then one day, I noticed that Marie, who was out with a friend, had a somewhat stiff and awkward expression. Usually, after hanging out with her friends and returning home, she would talk endlessly about what they did and what they ate in a machine gun-like manner, but not this time. Concerned about the obvious discomfort, I asked Marie, "Is something wrong?" but she was reluctant to open up. I thought it might be the difficult age of adolescence or that she had a fight with a friend, but it didn't seem to be the case. Because I could tell that she kept looking at me, wanting to say something. I decided to wait until she was ready to talk and stopped prying. Maybe I just sensed the atmosphere and ran away. Finally, the time had come to reveal my secret. However, Marie seemed to have a hard time starting the conversation and, in the end, did not open her mouth. In the evening, when Bob came home, I started preparing dinner, and when it was ready, I called Marie. It is a daily routine for the three of us to gather around the dining table. In the middle of the usual scenery, Marie, as if she had made up her mind, finally opened her mouth. Today, I went to donate blood with my friend. Bob, who sensed Marie's tense expression, slightly changed his expression, which I noticed. "I was told my blood type is A. I wonder why." I was greatly shaken by the fact that Marie had inadvertently discovered the secret in an unexpected way and stopped eating. Marie knows that both Bob and I have type O blood. Therefore, she also understands that it is almost impossible for a child with type A blood to be born from us as a couple. Taking that into account, Marie is asking us for an explanation. In fact, we had always told Marie that her blood type was O. We had submitted school documents as unknown blood type and hid documents like the Mother and Child Health Handbook, which have her real blood type written, where Marie wouldn't see them. We did this so that Marie wouldn't feel bad about having a different blood type from her parents, but now it was clear that it had backfired. However, when I tried to explain to Marie, I couldn't find the words, and I fell silent. Maybe sensing my distrust, Marie made a sad face and murmured, "Was I abandoned?" I wanted to deny it loudly, but contrary to my feelings, I couldn't speak, and my stiff body remained silent. Bob, knowing that I strongly wanted to explain myself, met my eyes but hesitated to speak. Marie seemed hurt by the fact that neither a rejection nor an affirmation came from us, and tears started to trickle down her cheeks. Then, without saying a word, she got up from her seat and locked herself in her room. I realize I've messed up, but it's too late now. Why do I always swallow my words at crucial moments? The dinner that Marie didn't touch is gradually getting cold. Bob and I finished our dinner in silence, then covered Marie's leftover food with plastic wrap and put it in the refrigerator. so she can eat it if she gets hungry later. Usually, the time would be filled with Marie's laughter and chatter, but today, it's eerily quiet. For the first time, I'm going to sleep in an unsettling silence, and I am acutely aware of the magnitude of the shock Marie experienced, causing tears to overflow. As I lie in my bed, the words Marie said earlier echo in my head. Her voice sounded profoundly sad. I want to hug her right now, but I'm afraid she might reject me, and I can't do it. In the end, I am a coward, most afraid of getting hurt myself. I can think of countless words to berate myself, but I still can't find the right words to say to Marie. Of course, there are many things I want to say. There's no way Marie is an abandoned child. She is my precious child, who I genuinely gave birth to, enduring all the pain. I remember the sensation of my belly gradually swelling and getting heavier, the pain of labor, the warmth of Bob's hand holding mine during childbirth, all too well. As Marie grew more active, there were many times I worried, but I can recall the scenery of the evening when we held hands and walked home, the essay she wrote to me as if it was yesterday. However, I'm tangled up with unnecessary thoughts, wondering if all of that was just my ego. Bob and I raised Marie with the utmost care, trying not to hurt her. I thought I had poured out my heart, filled with genuine love. And yet, I couldn't even deny Marie's words, let alone respond. If I could turn back time, I would immediately deny Marie's words. I want to hug her and tell her that she is definitely not an abandoned child, but my beloved, blood-related child. However, it might be too late. The fact that I couldn't deny it right away might mean that I felt guilty. Marie might not believe anything I say anymore. Thinking that, tears of regret start to overflow again. Then, there's a knock at the door of the room I'm in, and Bob quietly comes in. Asking is it okay now, Bob sits down on my bed, so I get out of the blanket and sit next to him. It's been 17 years, a long time, Bob says warmly and kindly, rubbing my shoulder. However, I couldn't honestly accept those comforting words because of self-loathing, and I blurted out, "Yes, it's over, the game of playing family." I think I said those self-destructive words because I couldn't bear it otherwise. Then, with a tone I could never have imagined from the usually gentle Bob, he firmly denied, "That's not true." Sure, it might have been a twisted connection, but there wasn't a single lie in these 17 years, was there? Saying that, Bob tightly grabbed my hand and said, "Pull yourself together." I am aware that I conveniently relied on Bob when I found out I was pregnant with Marie. I have been living my daily life feeling sorry for Bob all along. Because I was weak, I had the habit of thinking negatively about everything, like I stole Bob's life or I am a bad woman taking advantage of his kindness. Probably, Bob also noticed my guilt. I was ashamed of myself, who could only cry, but Bob gently hugged me and said firmly, "We are a family." Those were the words I wanted to hear the most, and at the same time, I wanted to tell Marie as soon as possible. The next morning, the first thing I saw with my swollen, puffy eyes from crying was Marie, also with puffy, swollen eyes. Marie, noticing me sitting on the sofa, came straight over and sat down next to me. Then she laid her head on my shoulder and slowly opened her mouth. "I heard a little bit from Dad last night. I'm sorry, I jumped to conclusions." According to Marie, Bob emphasized that Marie and I are real mother and daughter, and he will always be on Marie's side no matter what. He told her to hear about the circumstances of her birth and the beginning of my relationship with Bob from me. Marie was happy to hear that our relationship wouldn't change. I thought she had grown into a strong person. Feeling disgusted with myself for still not having the courage and running away from my feelings, I took a deep breath and started talking slowly while watching Marie's reaction. About Marie's real father, and how Bob accepted Marie and me as a family when I found out I was pregnant. As I talked, tears that I thought I had shed enough of yesterday started to overflow again. Still, I wanted to tell Marie in my own words, so I kept talking. About the day Marie first rolled over, the day she ate solid food, and the day she started walking, all precious memories that I can never forget. And I apologized deeply for not being able to express it properly yesterday. I sincerely apologized for making Marie feel anxious. "Even if you hate me, I want to be your mother from now on." When I said, "I'm sorry for being selfish," Marie seemed to think for a while and then fell silent. Then, after a little while, she said, "Oh. The blood type horoscope, everything was different," and laughed. "I was anxious because you didn't deny it right away, but you tend to clam up when you're flustered, don't you?" I realized that when I talked to Dad. She said it with a bit of teasing. Marie's eyes were filled with a gentle warmth, emitting a glow that made me feel truly relieved. I was moved by Marie's strong words and shed new tears, mumbling like a child, "Please forgive such a mother." Marie patted my shoulder and said, "My feelings for my family will never change. Dad, Mom," and then she looked at Bob, who had come into the living room at some point, and said brightly with tearful eyes. I felt the atmosphere brighten up completely from yesterday and finally felt relieved. I shed tears again, not knowing how many times it had been, hugged Marie, and reached out to Bob, and we all hugged each other, expressing our feelings of being a family together. We held each other tightly, promising not to let go, but had to separate once when Marie said, "I'll make breakfast." Once we calmed down, it felt a bit embarrassing, but it also felt refreshing, like our family could restart. All thanks to Bob, who cleared up the misunderstandings when I couldn't decide, and to Marie, who grew up so well. I decided then and there to become a person who wouldn't be a disgrace to these two. After all, I was able to meet such a wonderful family. Marie's breakfast included the soup that tasted exactly like the one I always make. While the side dish was Marie's original stir-fried vegetables, the soup was faithfully recreated from what I taught her. Even in such moments, I find Marie, who can stir my emotions, truly adorable. Embarrassed, Marie said, "It tastes like Mom's," and smiled as she sipped the miso soup. Bob also smiled gently and praised Marie, saying, "You did a great job." Thus, our daily routine was maintained, and we could once again gather around a dining table full of smiles and conversations. Later, as if suddenly recalling something, Marie said, "I thought Dad was just kind, but he can be reliable too, huh?" Confused, Bob tilted his head, and Marie explained, "I mean, you quickly stepped up to help Mom when she was in trouble, right?" "Wow, that's so cool." She smiled happily, adding that it's not something everyone could do. I, too, was greatly helped by Bob at that time. Even now, Bob helps me a lot, and I'm truly grateful to have someone like him around. "Thank you," I said, expressing my gratitude that had been building up for years. Tears welling up in his eyes, Bob laughed and said, "Stop it." Later, thanks to Marie's strong desire, we had a small wedding ceremony with only a photo shoot. At our home, there's a photo of me in a bridal gown, Bob in a suit, and Marie in a mini dress. It's an irreplaceable treasure that tells the story of our family. Listen, you can hear it, right? Today's episode from Marie is about her recent strength training. It seems she aims to tone up before summer ends. Maybe I should try it with Marie. You all smell like piss. It's just unbearable. Huh, who are you talking about? What? Yeah, Grandma. My mother-in-law had a dumbfounded expression on her face. I thought it was a good opportunity, so I started to fight back against my mother-in-law. My name is Kimberly Johnson. I am married and live with my husband, Mike, and our only daughter, Emily, making us a family of 3. I am currently not working and am a full-time housewife, although before getting married, I worked as an office worker at a small to medium-sized company. I feel truly fortunate to have worked at that company because that's where I met Mike. Actually, Mike was also working as an office worker. And it didn't take long for us to become friends. Initially, we would go out for drinks with other colleagues, but as we became closer, we started going out just the two of us. Eventually, I started dating Mike, and we went on dates to various places together. As we rapidly grew closer, I found out that I was pregnant with our daughter, Emily, even though we hadn't talked about getting married yet. I was surprised myself to find out that I was pregnant. I nervously told Mike about my pregnancy, and he proposed to me, saying, "Thank you, let's get married." Although the sequence of events was a bit unusual, I married Mike, and then our daughter, Emily, was born, making our happiness even greater. After retiring from my job, I became a full-time housewife and a mother to Emily. With a sense of pride in being Emily's mother, I believe I put in more effort than anyone else in raising her. When Emily was a baby, she cried a lot at night, causing me to lose sleep continuously. However, Mike noticed my struggle and took the initiative to help change Emily's diapers. Mike's proactive attitude and kindness towards child rearing were truly appreciated by me, who was exhausted from childcare. I was once again thankful to have met Mike. As Emily started attending daycare, I realized how quickly she was growing up. So, Emily is now 12 years old. She is in the 6th grade, and her height has significantly increased. Recently, she has been helping with household chores, and Emily is growing into a kind-hearted girl. Surrounded by my loving husband and daughter, I was living a happy life every day. However, one day, Mike said something shocking to me. "Sorry, but starting next week, my mother will be living with us."
What? Why?
My face turned pale as soon as I heard Mike's words. That's because his mother is a bit sarcastic, and I couldn't really like her. It was surprising to think that I would be living with her starting next week. Apparently, my mom has been getting into fights with the neighbors lately. She even had a heated argument with a supermarket clerk the other day. It's strange because this has never happened before. I wonder if she is feeling lonely living alone and wants attention, which is why she is behaving aggressively towards others. Besides, we can't let her cause trouble for the neighbors anymore. So, I decided that my mom should live with us. "Please take care of her, Kimberly." While nodding, I said, "I see, if that's the case, it makes sense." I understand, although I wasn't really looking forward to it. I thought it was indeed dangerous to leave her alone if she became aggressive towards others because of her loneliness. I felt a bit sorry for Mike's mother, who seemed to be running wild due to her loneliness, and thought I should lend a hand. Also, since she adores Emily, I thought there would be many benefits for her in living with us. So, some time passed, and our life living with Mike's mother began. As I expected, she adored Emily and looked genuinely happy when talking with her. Seeing her smile a lot, I felt that her loneliness might have been alleviated, and she stopped causing trouble like fighting with the neighbors. Maybe, as Mike predicted, she was acting aggressively towards others because she was lonely. Starting our life together might have filled the void in her heart. However, even though my mother-in-law seemed satisfied, her attitude towards me remained harsh as always. Well, my mother-in-law has many unpleasant traits, so instead of being direct, she tends to lash out at me by complaining about my housework. I had somewhat expected this, but surprisingly, she showed no mercy. One day, she harshly glared at me, saying the rice I cooked was too hard. I was surprised and responded, "Really?" "Yes. You should try it yourself." After being told so by my mother-in-law, I tasted the rice, but it seemed just as firm as usual. "No, it's not." However, she persistently said, "No, this rice is too hard." Honestly, I'm disgusted. "How can you serve this to Mike and Emily? You're completely unfit as a mother," in a very loud voice. Moreover, it didn't feel like she was going to back down at all. Well, I thought softer rice might be better, so I added water to the rice cooker and cooked it again. To be frank, only my mother-in-law preferred the softer rice. Seeing Mike and Emily with subtle expressions, I sighed. I somehow sensed that I was in a managerial position, caught between my mother-in-law and my family. Moreover, my mother-in-law didn't only complain about the hardness of the rice but also criticized the way I cleaned the floor. Until now, I only used a vacuum cleaner for floor cleaning. Because recent vacuum cleaners, unlike the old ones, have an excellent ability to suck up dirt and dust. Therefore, there was no particular problem with cleaning the floor using only a vacuum cleaner. However, from my mother-in-law's perspective, it seemed unacceptable that I was cleaning the floor with only a vacuum cleaner. So, she annoyingly told me how she used to clean the floor. When I was young, I used to wipe the floor with a mop before using the vacuum cleaner. But you only use the vacuum cleaner without even wiping the floor. You're not really cleaning the floor at all. From today, change the way you clean the floor. My mother-in-law spoke firmly and harshly. I was overwhelmed by her assertiveness and had no choice but to do as she said. Honestly, housework isn't just about sweeping the floor, and this particular task she ordered was quite burdensome for me. However, I didn't want to start a fight by opposing her methods, so I reluctantly began to clean the floor as she instructed. I was sighing as I wiped the floor with a mop. Suddenly, Emily called out to me. "Mom, what's going on? It's rare to see you wiping the floor with a mop." It was a Saturday, and Emily was home because there was no school. Well, actually. So I told Emily part of what happened. Then, kind-hearted Emily offered to help me with the floor cleaning. Thanks to Emily's help, we were able to finish cleaning the floor earlier than planned. However, my mother-in-law showed no sign of helping us, and just sat on the living room sofa, watching television. I sighed again as I saw her just sitting there. She has it so easy, I'm envious. That's what I thought as I looked at my mother-in-law sitting on the sofa, watching television. If she's going to complain about the way I clean the floor, she should at least show me specifically how she wants it done, which would make her complaints more convincing, I thought to myself. However, she didn't do that. Instead, she just complained and told me to figure out the improvements on my own, which was very off-putting. Even though Emily and I were working hard to clean the floor, she could just sit there and watch TV without a care in the world. I couldn't help but think how cold and brazen she was, and I started to get irritated with her. However, kind-hearted Emily went over to her grandmother and gently started a conversation. "Grandma, what are you watching?" To be honest, I was impressed by my daughter's actions. Feeling that I couldn't be outdone, I asked my mother-in-law, "I was wondering too, what are you watching?" However, my mother-in-law said something outrageous to us.
You both stink. Don't talk to me ever again.
Her shout echoed loudly in the living room. I was confused by what she meant and asked her for clarification. "Do we smell? What kind of smell is it?"
What kind of smell? It smells like piss coming from both of you. It's unbearable.
I was so taken aback by her rude comment. Huh? Whose smell? Huh?
Yeah, Grandma?
My mother-in-law had a stunned look on her face. I thought this was a good opportunity, so I started to fight back. The smell of urine is actually coming from you. If you can smell it, maybe it's time to change your diaper? Yeah, Grandma, let's change your diaper. At our suggestion, my mother-in-law looked stunned again. Actually, a few days ago, my mother-in-law had an accident. Somehow, she had wet the floor near the toilet. It seemed that she had tried to hold it in until she got to the toilet but couldn't make it in time. At first, Emily and I thought it was a one-time thing, but after it happened a few more times, we realized it was a serious issue. We somehow convinced my mother-in-law to start wearing diapers. Perhaps because the diapers were so effective, my mother-in-law might have forgotten she was wearing them. Also, the diaper silently absorbed the urine, so she might not have even realized she had an accident. I made this deduction and, considering her earlier harsh comment, everything seemed to add up. However, my mother-in-law didn't seem to understand what Emily and I were saying and just looked puzzled. Soon, she started to get irritated and said something harsh to us again.
You're saying I wet myself? What are you all talking about? Are you speaking ill of me and being mean?
Incredibly, my mother-in-law completely denied the valid remarks made by Emily and me, and instead, she played the victim. However, I felt something unnatural about her remarks. When she wet herself for the first time, she cried so much out of embarrassment. It was unnatural and frustrating that she made remarks as if she had completely forgotten how emotionally shaken she was. Even though Emily and I repeatedly told her the truth and made logical arguments, my mother-in-law refused to listen and continued to paint us as the villains. Eventually, I reached my limit and couldn't help but yell at her.
Mother-in-law, what on earth are you talking about? You are the only one here who smells like urine, so please don't blame us. Also, if you have forgotten that you wet yourself and are wearing a diaper, please check for yourself. Go to the bathroom right now, mother-in-law.
All right. You are so annoying, really. My mother-in-law apparently didn't think I was the type of person to yell like that, and feeling defeated by my forcefulness, she reluctantly went to the bathroom. While she was in the bathroom, Emily said to me, "Grandma is acting kind of strange, isn't she?" Even kind-hearted Emily seemed to think that my mother-in-law's behavior was odd. As I was responding, I heard a scream from the bathroom.
Oh, it's true. I am wearing a diaper and have wet myself. What on earth is happening? Kimberly, please come here quickly, hurry.
Apparently, my mother-in-law had realized in the bathroom that she was wearing a diaper and had wet herself, and she was shocked. Feeling her panic, I brought a spare diaper and handed it to her in the bathroom, averting a crisis. I thought the panic might have been too much for her. But then I reconsidered and felt that it was a good wake-up call, and I felt somewhat relieved. And my mother-in-law seemed to have successfully changed her diaper in the bathroom, so everything seemed to be all right. My mother-in-law came out of the bathroom looking utterly dejected.
Mother-in-law, that's great, isn't it? You were able to change your diaper and must feel refreshed.
When I said that, my mother-in-law glared at me with a terrifying expression.
What do you mean, great? What do you mean, refreshed? Do you think it's good that I have to wear diapers? You are such a cold person. There is no way you could understand my feelings.
Indeed, I can't understand your feelings at all. As you can see, I am not old and frail, and I am healthy. So, it's only natural that I can't understand your current feelings, right?
Are you picking a fight with me, the mother of your husband, Mike? I can't believe it. Why did Mike marry someone with such a bad personality, this wicked woman?
You are just as wicked. And the world calls people like you wicked.
What? What are you talking about? What part of me is wicked? You are really rude.
I was flabbergasted that my mother-in-law genuinely did not think she was a wicked person. However, there was no sign that she would change her misguided opinion or attitude. So, I had no choice but to yell at her again.
Do you understand? When people say rude, they are referring to people like you. You are causing trouble for our family. But I guess you probably don't realize that, do you?
What are you talking about?
When have I ever caused trouble for your family? Don't say ridiculous things.
Don't you realize it yet, really? I am disappointed in you, mother-in-law. You told me that the rice was too hard, right? You should know better than anyone how off-base that opinion was.
But the rice was hard. I didn't say anything wrong. I just told the truth. How am I causing trouble? Don't misunderstand.
As the fierce battle between my mother-in-law and me continued with no end in sight, surprisingly, it was the gentle-hearted Emily who put an end to it. Grandma, before you came, the rice at our house was never too hard. But since you came, the rice has been like porridge, and honestly, neither I, nor my mom, nor dad like it very much. Sure enough, my mother-in-law was quite shocked to hear such an opinion from her beloved granddaughter, Emily. I threw the final words at her.
Just like the diaper incident, you seem to have forgotten, so I'll say it. It's not that the rice I cooked is hard, it's because your teeth are dentures.
That's right. In fact, my mother-in-law had dentures. Moreover, she had dentures even before I married Mike. Yet, for some reason, the mother-in-law in front of me seemed to have forgotten that she even had dentures. Because of this, she couldn't digest my words properly and screamed.
It's a lie! There's no way I have dentures. It's a lie! You are deceiving me. I'm sure of it. You wicked woman!
Seeing my mother-in-law snapping at me, I sighed involuntarily. If you don't believe my words, check your teeth in the mirror in the bathroom. Surely, that will make it clear who is lying.
Fine, I'll prove that I'm right. In fact, I'm certain I will win. Watch me, wicked woman.
With that, my mother-in-law headed to the bathroom with full determination. However, a few seconds later, I heard her screaming from the bathroom. I grabbed the denture adhesive and, feeling exasperated, headed to the bathroom where my mother-in-law was.
What was the result? It was as I said, right?
Then, my mother-in-law answered weakly. As you said, I completely have dentures. I'm sorry for saying rude things earlier. My mother-in-law, who was completely down and feeling dejected, unusually apologized to me sincerely. Seeing her like that, my irritated heart felt refreshed. I handed her the denture adhesive and watched as she re-adhered her dentures. Recently, denture adhesives are light and efficient, so my mother-in-law might have forgotten that she had dentures. When my mother-in-law returned to the living room, she apologized to Emily as well.
Emily, I'm sorry for shouting and saying rude things to your mom earlier. Please forgive this foolish me.
Then, the kind Emily forgave her grandmother.
It's okay, Grandma. If you apologize properly like that, it's totally fine. Thank you.
My mother-in-law seemed to be moved by Emily's kindness and shed a few tears. It's okay, Grandma. Let's watch TV together, said Emily, taking her grandmother's hand and leading her to the sofa. I was touched by Emily's hospitable actions towards her grandmother. Children grow up really fast, not just in appearance but also in their words and actions, which made me feel a bit wistful. To override that wistfulness, I said loudly,
Then, I want to watch TV together too. Sure, that's fine. Let's watch together.
And so, Emily, my mother-in-law, and I spent some time watching TV programs and laughing together. It was a happy time, and the atmosphere was good. But then, my mother-in-law suddenly stood up and said this to me. I know I leaked urine, and yes, it does smell. But I don't think it's entirely my fault. What do you mean?
Kimberly, the floor in the hallway in front of your bathroom isn't cleaned properly, so the smell of urine that was stuck to the floor didn't get cleaned, did it? It's wrong of you to blame it all on me. What kind of terrible person are you?
And then, in the same manner as before, my mother-in-law started blaming me again. Honestly, her emotional ups and downs are too intense. I can't make sense of it. Is she the embodiment of a roller coaster or something? That can't be true. I've been cleaning the hallway in front of the bathroom properly, just as you told me to. If you still don't believe me, I'll have you smell the floor. When I said that, my mother-in-law backed down and apologized again. Seriously, how many times is she going to repeat this? But, I thought my mother-in-law's behavior was too strange, so I decided to consult with Mike about it. To my surprise, Mike also found many aspects of my mother-in-law's recent behavior puzzling, so we decided to take her to the hospital. We told my mother-in-law that it was for a health checkup, and somehow managed to take her to the hospital, despite her dislike for it. There, she underwent several tests, and the results revealed what was happening to her body. The diagnosis given by the doctor was Alzheimer's disease. To put it simply, it's dementia, but the scary part of Alzheimer's is that it progresses gradually. Symptoms that occur during its progression include becoming suddenly irritable, incontinent, and forgetful. Even after that, my mother-in-law's disease continued to progress, and we eventually had to admit her to a nursing home. She was reluctant to move in, but there was no other choice. Looking at the empty house, I surprisingly felt a sense of loneliness, but also felt refreshed. In the house without my mother-in-law, I, Mike, and Emily were able to spend happy days as before. Moreover, Mike recently got a promotion at work, and his salary was increased. And there's more good news. Emily won an award in a writing contest. Mike and I, being the doting parents we are, started saying things like Emily could become a novelist in the future, as soon as we heard the news. Emily, on the other hand, said, "You both are exaggerating. It's not that easy, you know." But thank you for the compliment, looking a bit shy.
Actually, I have some news to share with you too as well.
What's up? Both of them asked me curiously.
I've found a part-time job. I'm going to start working at a bakery, so I'll be bringing home bread. Mom, that's amazing. Working at a bakery is so stylish. That's great, work hard at the bakery. Sure will.
Laughter filled the living room. I am very happy now.
What? You betrayed me. Don't mess with me. You're the one who kept scamming money from me and Dad. You brainwashed us, telling us it's better not to be around Lisa, lied that you were our mother, and because of that, Dad died without seeing Lisa for years. I'm not just gonna get back the money you scammed from me, but also the money you scammed from Dad. After sucking all the money out of us and having a good time, you better be prepared for hell.
My brother, furiously yelling, approached Maple, who was startled and fell on her buttocks.
Well, I guess we'll see each other in court next time. We left after leaving those words.
My name is Lisa Miller, a 30-year-old office worker. I have recently started dating a man named Nick and he is seriously considering marrying me, so he told me he wanted to meet my parents as soon as possible. However, I feel sorry for him. That's because my parents divorced a long time ago, and both of them have already passed away. My parents' relationship deteriorated to an irreparable state due to simple misunderstandings, and they ended up divorcing. At that time, I was 16 years old, and after my parents divorced, I was taken in by my mother. Even after the divorce, my mother continued to care for me very much, and thanks to her allowing me to do anything I wanted, I was able to continue taking piano lessons that I had been taking since I was a child, and I was also able to go to cram school. In return, I did my best to do housework to the extent that it did not interfere with my studies. I tried to cook dinner as much as possible, and although it was mostly rice balls, I also prepared lunch boxes for my mother.
The rice balls you make are always delicious.
I remember being very happy when my mother complimented me like that. And so, I successfully went on to college, and because I worked hard in my studies, I was able to go to a fairly prestigious university.
You did a great job. It's amazing that you're going to a higher level university than your mom and dad.
I was very happy to see my mother so happy. By the way, I was told by my mother that it was okay to meet my father because the reason for the divorce was not related to the children, so I used to visit him regularly.
Oh, you came. It's been a while since I saw Ted, hasn't it? Lisa, have you been well?
Yes, how are you, Dad and brother? I'm fine, and Ted is overflowing with energy. After my mother and father divorced, my father lived with my brother Ted. My brother is 4 years older than me, and he was 22 years old when I decided to go to college. At that time, he was job hunting, and he seemed very happy when I visited him, perhaps because he was tired from job hunting. It was lonely not to be able to live with my brother, but it was nice to see him healthy and well when I visited him regularly.
Lisa, you got into college? And it's a pretty tough university, isn't it? That's amazing. You got into a higher university than me. That's amazing.
Thank you both. How about we go out for sushi to celebrate today?
Yay, I can eat sushi.
Even though our parents were divorced, I got along well with my father and brother, and every time I met them, I felt happy. However, after I started attending college, my father remarried another woman. Since then, it became difficult to see my brother. The new mom wants us to get used to our new life as much as possible, so she doesn't want us to meet our former family too much. I see. I was told that by my father on the phone, and I felt conflicted. Of course, I don't mind my father remarrying and finding happiness again. On the contrary, I think it's a happy thing, but I didn't want to not see my brother because of that. Is it not possible to reduce the frequency of our meetings? I'm sorry, but Ted seems to be busy with job hunting, and I don't want to cause any confusion. I see. But once we get used to our new life, I'm sure the new mom will let us meet. Okay, I understand. I wasn't very convinced, but I didn't want to protest and cause trouble for my father and brother in their relationship with their new mother, so I decided to endure it. After that, I finished my college life and got a job. During that time, I couldn't meet my brother or father. It's been 4 years, they could have at least let me see them once. No, maybe they are already living fulfilling days without the need to see me. My brother, who was job hunting at the time, has already been employed for several years. I want to see how hard my big brother is working. With that in mind, I took the initiative to call my father. Then, I heard an unfamiliar woman's voice on the other end of the phone. "Hello, who is this?" I thought this was my father's number. "Could you be Lisa?" "Yes. I am Maple, the woman who remarried your father. Your father is currently working and can't leave, so I answered instead." "Oh, I see. By the way, what made you call?" It's been 4 years since I last saw my father and brother, and I thought it was about time I wanted to see them." When I said that, the woman named Maple made a surprising comment. "Oh, you haven't seen them for that long?" I thought you were meeting regularly." No, not at all." "Well then, maybe they don't want to see you." Actually, even when I mention your name now, my husband doesn't show any reaction at all. "Really? What about my brother? Isn't he nearby?" I was hoping that at least my brother would react to my call. However, Maple said, "Ted is right next to me, but he is just touching his computer without any reaction. It seems that both of them have already forgotten about you and are accustomed to their current lives. They are both living happily, so can you leave them alone?" "Well, I'm going to hang up now." Maple said that and hung up. I was so shocked that I couldn't move for a while even after the call ended. I didn't want to believe that my brother and father had forgotten about me and were living their lives. When I consulted my mother, she said, "That's strange. Those two love you, Lisa," and tried to call my father, but he told my mother, "Please don't call anymore," so in the end, we couldn't meet or talk with my father and brother. Since then, I haven't been able to see my father and brother. My work has become busier, and the days have passed with them still in the back of my mind. In the midst of that, about 3 years after that call, I received sad news. My dad. It was a message that my father had died in a traffic accident. I rushed to the hospital where my father was taken. In the room where I was guided by the hospital staff, there was already my father covered with a white cloth. When I removed the cloth, my father's face looked as if he was just sleeping, with a gentle expression and his eyes closed. Dad. I hadn't seen my father for 7 years. I never thought I would reunite with him like this. Lisa. Big brother. As I was mourning my father's death, my brother entered the room. My brother, whom I met for the first time in 7 years, had a very mature atmosphere.
"Why didn't you come to see us even once? Did you start hating me and Dad?" he asked. "Wait a minute, it was Maple, your new mother, who said you guys didn't want to see me."
No way. Maple would never say that. She is an amazing person. I admire her. That's why there is no way she would say not to meet Lisa. No way. My brother seemed to trust Maple very much. It seemed that they had built a very strong bond during these 7 years. Then, a person who seemed to be Maple came in.
"Oh, it's our first time meeting in person."
Hello. Maple was a woman in her early 50s, with a very domestic and competent vibe. I come across various adults in my work, and somehow, she gave me the impression of being a bit cunning. My husband suddenly passed away, and it was really shocking. "We are going to hold the funeral soon, and I would really like you and your mother to attend," Maple said. There were various things to consider, but the most important was my father's funeral. My mother and I attended my father's funeral together and bid him farewell. The funeral went without any issues, but there was a bit of a dispute over the inheritance. "You haven't seen your father for 7 years, so could you possibly renounce your inheritance?"
"No, wait a minute. It was you who didn't let me see my father."
As I said that, my brother, Ted, interjected. "Are you still saying that? There's no way Mom would do that. How many times do I have to explain it to you?"
"Believe me. Maple told me not to see you or Dad anymore. She said they were happy now and asked me to leave them alone."
Despite my desperate pleas, Ted did not believe me. Oh dear, somehow I seem to be the villain here. Mom is not at fault. Lisa is just saying strange things. Look, I'm not really interested in the inheritance, but could you renounce it? What? I'm entitled to a portion of it, right? If Dad saw you being so greedy about money, I wonder what he would think. Maple treated me as if I were a money grubber. Then, my mother stepped in. Please wait. My daughter is just claiming her rightful share. Please stop making unfounded accusations. Thanks to my mother, Maple stopped talking. Regardless of what is said, I will ensure that my daughter receives at least her rightful share. Ted said angrily.
What? Are you and Lisa colluding to make things difficult for us?
My mother calmly denied it. That's not the case. This is just a claim for what is rightfully ours. The discussion was difficult, but in the end, I was able to receive my rightful share. However, as a result, a rift formed between my brother and me. It was because I ended up opposing Maple, whom Ted trusts. I was able to see my brother after a long time, but I ended up being disliked by him. Losing my father was sad enough, but having issues with my brother made it even more mentally draining. And then, more misfortune befell me. My mother was diagnosed with cancer. She was given only 1 year to live. I felt like I was being crushed by the weight of my misfortunes. Why does this always happen to me? I became quite negative, but my mother, noticing my change, spoke to me kindly.
Everyone will die someday. It's not something we can control. I have been happy living with you, Lisa, and I plan to enjoy the time I have left to the fullest.
Mom. After that, my mother and I went on trips and did as many things as she wanted to before she passed away. Having lost both of my beloved parents, I was drowning in sorrow, but my mother's final words encouraged me to enjoy life to the fullest, so I decided to wipe away my tears and move forward. Ted came to my mother's funeral, but he brought Maple with him. As a result, he was aggressive towards me and kept bringing up the inheritance.
Since you forcibly took part of Dad's inheritance, I will definitely take part of Mom's.
I didn't want to fight anymore, so I quietly agreed. Yes, of course. I intended to give it to you from the start. I completed the necessary procedures for the inheritance and ensured Ted received his share. I haven't seen Ted since then. There has been no communication, and I feel awkward reaching out. Several years passed, and I met Nick through a friend's introduction. He was considering marriage seriously, and I mustered the courage to tell him everything about my past. That my parents were deceased, and that I was almost estranged from my only sibling, my brother. Nick, after listening to everything, still said he wanted to marry me. I fell in love with him all over again for that. We continued to date smoothly, and I eventually received a formal marriage proposal. It must be moments like these when one feels on top of the world. However, just then, I received a sudden phone call from my brother.
Hello, Ted? It's been a while, hasn't it? What's up? Oh, speaking of which, I have something to report to you too.
I was so happy to hear from my brother after such a long time that I inadvertently started talking quickly. But then, my brother interrupted me, saying something incomprehensible.
Why didn't you come to Dad's funeral? I never thought you could be so cruel.
I was taken aback by my brother's sudden accusation over the phone. What's wrong? Why are you saying something so nonsensical out of the blue?
What do you mean, nonsensical? Dad is dead.
Calm down, Ted.
How can I be calm?
Was this some kind of sick joke?
No, it was too cruel for that.
But there was no sign of lying in my brother's sobbing voice. I took a deep breath to calm myself and then spoke slowly to my brother. Ted, Dad passed away 5 years ago. To which my brother responded with astonishment.
What are you talking about? Dad didn't die back then.
What are you talking about, Ted? We saw Dad's body together, and we even had a funeral. I couldn't understand why my brother was saying such things. No, Dad was alive. I actually lived with Dad for about 3 years after that. What do you mean? That's why I was living with Dad. I really couldn't understand what my brother was saying. Dad was alive? It seemed better to go along with his story for now. Yes, but they said he would die soon from an illness if I didn't give alms, so I gave all my earnings as alms. At this point, I realized that my brother had been deceived by someone. But still, the alms weren't enough, and then Dad died. I'd like to meet the person you were giving alms to.
Of course. Lisa, you should get saved too. That person found out where Dad was and helped him out.
A few days later, I went with my brother to visit the person he said he was indebted to. The place was located inside a regular office building, ostensibly a counseling center. They said that if you consult with the teacher, they can solve any problem, and I was led by my brother into a private room in the office. There was Maple.
Why are you here?
Well, if it isn't Lisa. Wait a minute, you remarried with Dad and became Ted's new mother, right? Why does Ted call you teacher? Ted and I have a patient-teacher relationship. No, you lived with Ted, right? Ted even called you Mom. What are you talking about? Maple is a counselor, not a mother. Mom died 3 years ago. Hold on. Maple, are you brainwashing Ted? What are you talking about? I'm just listening to his story. Before that, I was counseling his father. So, you were deceiving Dad.
Hey, don't say such terrible things.
It seems that you, Lisa, are quite confused. It's understandable, losing both your mother and father can lead to mental illness.
What are you talking about?
You may be unconsciously blocking out reality in your mind. You are suppressing the sorrow of losing your parents deep in your heart. I can help release that.
Stop it, I'm already living looking forward.
Are you really? Aren't you just enduring it? I'm not enduring anything. It's better not to force yourself. If you do as I say, your heart will feel lighter than it does now. What the teacher is saying is true. Ted also became healthier that way. So why don't you leave it to me? Well then, please go ahead. Good, you're a good child. Now, sit here and think about your mom and dad in your head. When I place my hand on your head, the sad feelings will mysteriously disappear. How about now? Do you feel lighter? No, I don't feel lighter at all. Oh, maybe it's because there is no offering, so there isn't enough power. If you really want to lighten your heart, you have to make a lot of offerings, otherwise, you can't evoke the power. Is that so? Well, should I start by offering $1,000? $1,000? That's not nearly enough. To be completely healed, you need to offer much, much more.
Is that so? Then, my brother also made a lot of offerings, right?
Yes, he almost offered all the money he earned from work. That's why he was able to find his father and regain happy days. But, the offerings stopped halfway, and his father really disappeared this time. So, he really regrets that and is increasing his offerings to be saved. I see. I called out towards the entrance. It seems so, Nick. As I said that, the door of the room opened, and my fiancé, Nick, entered. Who are you? Maple looked at Nick with a suspicious face and asked, so Nick handed her his business card. I am Nick, a detective. I have heard everything and also recorded it. It seems you have brainwashed Ted and extorted a large amount of money from him. Not only that, but you also tried to brainwash Lisa.
A detective? He is also my fiancé. And we are planning to sue you and recover the money.
When I said that, Maple chuckled with a momentary flinch. What are you saying? Ted was saved by me. There is no fact that I deceived him. I just provided proper counseling, right? Maple asked my brother with a triumphant face. I saw my brother glance at us before saying, I was deceived by you and forced to give you a lot of money.
What did you say?
Maple's eyes widened at my brother's statement. It seems that Ted is planning to sue you.
Wait a minute, this must be some kind of mistake. Ted, I saved you, right? And yet, you betray me like this?
Teacher, I admit that thanks to you, both my father and I felt somewhat lighter. But it is also a fact that you gradually brainwashed us. In reality, I lost the ability to make proper judgments because of you. You brought a man with a similar face to my father, making me believe that my father was actually alive. And then you implanted fear that my father would die if I didn't work hard on the offerings. Moreover, you disposed of all the photos of my father and me without my knowledge, and replaced them with composite photos of a fake father. Because the photos were so sophisticated and natural, I naturally believed that the fake father was my real father. And before I knew it, most of my salary, which I earned from working, was taken away by you. It wasn't until I reunited with Lisa and she showed me the real photos of my father that I realized I had been brainwashed. That's why I decided to sue you after securing evidence of you actually demanding an exorbitant amount of money.
How could you? You betrayed me. Don't mess with me. You kept extorting money from me and Dad. You brainwashed Dad and me, convinced us that it would be better not to see Lisa, and even lied to us that you were our mother. Because of that, Dad died without seeing Lisa for many years. I'm not only going to get back the money you extorted from me, but also the money you took from Dad. You've had a good time sucking money out of us, now get ready to see hell.
My brother angrily confronted Maple, causing her to fall on her but in fear. Well, I guess we'll see you in court then. Leaving those words behind, we left the place. Later, my brother asked a lawyer friend for help, and based on the evidence Nick secured, we sued Maple. As a result, she was ordered to pay my brother $500,000, the total amount she had extorted from my father and him. Not only was Maple ordered to pay compensation, but her outrageous fraud was also revealed to her past patients and their families, resulting in a large number of lawsuits and a tremendous amount of compensation. However, I think she deserves to receive this retribution because she has been doing as she pleased until now. It turned out that the reason my brother and I had a strained relationship was that we were brainwashed, and everything was resolved, and the gap between my brother and me disappeared. And my brother also attended the wedding of Nick and me. We hadn't seen each other for many years because of Maple, but to fill the gap of those years, we planned to meet regularly and get along well as siblings from now on.